Patrick.
Hey, how you doing, man?
I'm all right. How you doing?
Ruby. What do you think? Standard primarily, but also touch on other stuff if it's interesting.
Yeah, I think there's a ton of stuff to talk about in Standard. There was like big events on Moto, and then there was a Grand Prix last week.
Right. And then for what it's worth, if you have the MTGO deck lists and so on, there's two decks in particular I'd like to call out from the Pioneer Prelim April 29th.
Give me a second. Pioneer Prelim, April 29th. Got it. Which ones?
There's a Demonic Pact Yorion deck.
Oh, that's hot.
I see. Let me just surprise you with the other.
You just said those words, and I'm just like,
I know.
Hell
See,
yeah.
that's what I said. Let's just see where it goes. I bet it'll be good.
Let's just use this as the start of the podcast because this is too awesome. Let's just go. Just go. This is the start of the podcast.
So, dude, this Demonic Pact deck. Holy cow! Do we have an early favorite for coolest deck of this week?
Just a favorite decks, yeah,
dude. So Yorion being able to blink, like it's already like interesting if you can get 3 extra cards, right? Like if you're using Yorion with Treacherous Blessing, like in Standard, or Yorion with Doom Foretold is interesting too, in terms of just when you're just using a bunch of cards that you might want to throw away to Doom Foretold. Those happen to frequently be things with triggers, which can then combo well with Yorion. Doom Foretold is really interesting with Demonic Pact anyway, though, because obviously if Demonic Pact, the part where you draw 2 cards or the part where you make them discard 2 cards, or the part where you drain something for 4, all those are like really awesome modes.
Okay, so Demonic Pact to begin with. This is from Magic Origins, right?
Yeah.
This card it's 2 and BB, right? So just to refresh the memories of people who don't know this card, because this card was such an exciting build around. People tried to build around it in Standard. It showed up at least a couple different Pro Tours, although it didn't crack any top 8s at the Pro Tour level. But this card has the following text. At the beginning of your upkeep, choose one that hasn't been chosen. And like you were saying, it's got 4 abilities. It deals 4 damage to target creature or player, and you gain 4 life. So it's like a War Leader's Helix. I guess that probably hasn't been errated to Planeswalkers, but it doesn't really.
Nope, just creatures or players.
Yep. The second one is target opponent discards 2 cards. The third one is draw 2 cards. And the fourth one is you lose the game. Right? So as long as you don't lose the game... This is like a 4-mana time-delayed, like, cruel ultimatum. It is one of the coolest cards ever.
Yeah, and normally, if you were to just use it straight up, you get really powerful effects for 3 turns, and then you lose the game when you have to pay the demons.
Well, unless you're like Krebovich here, who played in the Pioneer Preliminary, and have Gideon of the Trials, you can turn off the ability to lose the game, kinda, right?
Yeah, so that's one way to get out of it. Another way to get out of it is obviously you can sacrifice it to Doom Foretold. Then you're just way ahead.
Really winning then. Wow.
And you just don't wait. Don't wait until you have to put the trigger on the stack. That'll be too late. Oh, but yeah. Sacrifice it on the 3rd turn if you want, know. Another good one, Final Payment. Final Payment is black-white. As an additional cost, you can pay 5 life or sacrifice a creature or an enchantment. Demonic Pact, like Treacherous Blessing, is an excellent enchantment to sacrifice.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Flicker of Fate is incredible with Demonic Pact. You see, when you've got a Demonic Pact on the table, you're getting a really good effect, a really good effect, a really good effect, and then you flicker it, and you'll immediately get a really good effect and have 2 more turns of really good effects before you have to even worry about paying the piper.
Yeah.
And all this is not even counting that Yorion assures you of it. So you can just play Demonic Pact on spec because you just have a Yorion already. The first pact is free.
I mean, the first pact should keep you going for I don't know, get 7 turns or something, right? It's crazy.
So another thing you can do, you can play Trial of Ambition, which is another enchantment that is great to blink with Yorion. It's great to blink with Flicker of Fate. It's another permanent you can sacrifice to Doom Foretold. I mean, this is just like such an excellent use of this, right?
I mean, yeah. This deck is so cool. So it's got 28 enchantments, and I guess you don't have to be choosy about how many you play of which when you're at 80 cards, right? But it's also got Starfield and Nyx to kind of run it all back again, right?
Well, and one of the things that's amazing about Starfield of Nyx is that if you have Doom Foretold, Starfield of Nyx going, I mean, you can just keep going forever.
Is that just like a 2-card combo that smokestacks only one player?
Well, it's better than that I mean, it doesn't hit their land, but it gets whatever, like they have to sacrifice something every turn, and you get to recurse something every turn. Like you can re-trigger Demonic Pact every single turn and never have to pay at all. Or you could just one turn hit the Pact, the next turn hit Oath of Kaya, the next turn hit Trial of Ambition. You can just cycle through because your packs that you've reset are worth more than a card a turn. That combination is incredible, and that's not even in the, speaking to the part where if you get 5 enchantments that are not auras, if you get 5 enchantments in play, now you can actually just attack for an incredible amount.
Oh, wow. Well, that's just cheating, Patrick.
Well, but here's the other thing. You can get out of the Demonic Pact this way, too. If times get tough, you can actually just kill your Demonic Pact. You can Murderous Rider your Demonic Pact when you have a Starfield of Nyx in play. This is a deck that is committed to not paying its tab. I know you've got to...
When you just said the words, you're just like, hey, did you see that Yorion Demonic Pact deck? Like,
dude, I know you have to love the Archon of Sun's Grace also.
I mean, Archon of Sun's Grace is just so not the thing that's going on. Yeah, it's great. I guess it's just drawing tons of extra cards. It's obviously very powerful.
Well, you can pay for... Isn't this just, like, pretty good in the context of Pioneer? Like, this is, like...
It's fantastic, especially in the context of this deck. The only thing I'd say is this deck's got a lot of 4s, right? Like, Archon of Sun's Grace is 4, Demonic Pact is a 4, Doom Foretold is a 4...
That's not that many. That's 12, and there's 1K as Wrath, but you're talking about an 80-card deck.
All right. I guess I don't know the baseline math on 80-card decks, but that felt like a lot of 4s.
It's plus 33%.
So it's like 8 4s, right?
It is. Yeah, it's kind of like 9. But like...
It has Elspeth's Nightmare instead of Elspeth Conquers Death. And when the set first came out, I thought that I would like Elspeth's Nightmare more than Elspeth Conquers Death. And I was wrong, because Elspeth Conquers Death is one of my favorite cards in Standard, and Elspeth's Nightmare gets played almost not at all. But I'm surprised that there's no Elspeth Conquers Death, only Elspeth Nightmare here.
So Elspeth's Nightmare is really important right now in Pioneer, because some of the most dominant decks, like for instance, the Breach deck, Underworld Breach, it's like really strong. You know?
Yeah, you think?
And Elspeth Conquers Death is a little slow. We're talking about a deck here that has just an incredible amount of high-impact permanents to blink, right? On 5, you really want to be playing Yorion. And so it really puts an extra price on any cards that cost 5. You know, you want to be able to just play your cards before you get to Yorion.
Yeah, I guess I don't have a strong feeling about Elspeth Conquers Death and Pioneer specifically. Everything you're saying makes a lot of sense to me. It's very expensive, especially when you've got a 5 you can play on turn 5 every single time, provided you hit 5 mana.
Yep. But yeah, I think this deck is sweet all the way down. Even the Birth of Meletus is such a great ad for this deck, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think Oh, please.
Oh, I was just thinking about, like, just spitballing, playing a Yorion Sky Nomad standard 80-card deck that was kind of a Doom Foretold deck. And the reason I thought about it, I was just like, well, you could now play, like, 4 of the Golden Eggs, 4 of the Guild Globes, for the Birth of Meletis, for that new one, I can't remember the name, that it comes into play, you draw a card, but you can tap and sacrifice it to tap a creature. That one, that kind of like would really slow people down and make them play more and more stuff into your stuff.
Totally. I think that card's underrated.
Yeah, it seems like in this strategy that I'm speculating right now with like just a ton of Guild Globe, Birth of Meletis type stuff, like you could just play, I was going to say 20, but 20 is not enough, right? Like you just play a ton of those cards that all kind of get you going. Like your fail state is you played 2-mana cantrip spells on turns 2, 3, 4, 4 again, and then just on turn 5 you just cast Yorion and draw 5 cards. Like that.
Yeah, I'm sure nobody's running you over in those first 4 turns.
Nah, dog, they won't. You got Birth of Meletis, that's slowing down their stuff, right? And then you just do a lot of those. Yeah, that's what happened. Yeah, look, man, I'm sure you would have to, maybe you have to cast an Oath of Kaya on turn 3, and then play some of those blinky ones.
Okay, that's starting to sound a lot better. As long as we can get like half of the do-nothing cards to do a little,
okay, look,
then I buy it.
I think my whole macro point being, you're
going to dedicate your whole deck to building a Keruga instead of just playing Keruga and 60 cards.
When you put it that way, it sounds awful because it's not even a Keruga, because we're talking about a bunch of do-nothings blinking back instead of a bunch of, like, Cavaliers blinking back.
Right.
Like, a Cavalier blinking back is some serious business. Or,
right.
But a Guild Globe blinking back is a serious...
It's a serious business in some worlds. We're just not in that world. This world is so much more powerful because of the companions. So I think it's weird because we got to like change a lot of our baseline assumptions, because the thing you're describing, I think, is like a powerful game plan in the majority of standard formats. It's just right now they've got stuff in a different place. I mean, if you were to think about it, 6 mana draw 4 that has cycling 1 colorless, that would be a little nutty in a lot of standard formats, right?
It is, and guess what, Patrick? It is, I don't know if it's a staple, but it's played. It's in decks.
Yeah. So actually, on the note of cycling, though, there's a cycling deck in this Pioneer tournament. It's like a hardcore Zenith Flare deck. So this is a Jeskai cycling deck. It's got Flourishing Fox and Nimble Obstructionist as its only creatures. Flourishing Fox here, sometimes it gives the beat down the business or whatever, but a lot of the time it's just cycling for 1. And this is a deck that's too combo-rific to play things, to play anything, to play most of the cycling synergies that possibly could be. It's got a couple of Supreme Verdicts and Azorius Charm, but this deck's really about playing this game plan of Censor, Hieroglyphic Illumination, Neutralize, Cast Out, Shark Typhoon. So it's kind of this control deck, right? It plays kind of like a sideways weird control deck, but then it just goes Zenith Flare twice and 20s you.
I love it. I mean, you can do that in 1 turn. Why is there no Teferi in the sideboard?
I don't know.
Like, I feel like
I would play Teferi. I would play Teferi in the main deck. I don't know.
Totally matchups where you're just like, yeah, I'm just going to play Teferi. Love Zerda here, right? Zerda is almost free, right? So Zerda's the companion that was chosen by Flabbergasted, and Zerda says that each permanent in your starting deck has an activated ability. The only permanents that we have here are creatures that have cycling, and then Cast Out and Shark Typhoon also have cycling, so no problem. You could play Teferi, that has many activated abilities.
Definitely. If you get Zerda down, it's not just free material either. I mean, obviously it is free material, right? But you can also just fluctuate her a little, right? Like if you have Zerda down, your Rogrin Trinome only costs 1 to cycle. Your Irrigated Farmland, 1 to cycle.
And you get a little
your Castle Vantris
on Shark Typhoon, right?
Yeah, that's Castle nice. Castle Vantris, only 2 to use. So it's like pretty powerful in this deck.
So you claim that Flourishing Fox is mostly here for cycling. That guy is the best Kyrian Dryad ever, isn't it? Like, it's half as much mana as Kyrian Dryad, and I think it's easier to make it big.
I don't know. No, I don't think so. I mean, the fact that it costs 1 and it cycles, those are huge upsides, right? But like, you're not able to just play Quirion Dryad proactively in this deck. Like, it's not like if
you would not play Kyrian Dryad in this deck, but I'm just saying, like, that card is like.
Well, I mean, the Fox. So if you play it like a Quirion Dryad, if you play Flourishing Fox specifically, you're still not able to do what you did with Dryad, because with the Dryad, you could frequently just spend all your mana. Like, the Dryad first was good, quote unquote, when it was in a world where there were pitch spells, and there was a lot of, I spend my mana main phase just being able to cycle through my deck. This is a deck that wants to hold up Neutralize, hold up Censor, hold up Azorius Charm. So you have to, like slow play it a little bit more. That's all.
So I think that I totally get that. That's pretty cool. But what if you just played Flourishing Fox on turn 1, and then, your Underworld Breach opponent didn't kill it, right? And then you held up Censor on turn 2, and you held up Neutralize on turn 3. But if they didn't do anything, you're like, all right, I have a 3/3 now. Now I have a 7/7, and then you're dead.
How do you have a 7/7? I was with you with the 3/3. How did you get to a 7/7?
On turn 3, when they didn't do anything, then I just cycled a bunch of times and then untapped and killed them.
If you had 5 cycling 1 cards, you would not, and all your land was untapped, you would still not have a 7/7. I don't know. Anyway, I see what you're going with, though. I agree that you can use it that way. The part of the issue, though, is that with the Dryad, when people would try to fight back, you'd be growing as you acted.
Yeah.
With the Fox, they're going to try to do stuff, and then when you cast Censor, you still just have a 1/1.
That is true, but I'm just saying, you get the beats on, and then they just get low, and then you just Zenith Flare them. I think it ends it quick. But I guess you could just hold up your stuff and then just counter them the regular way. I guess it's pretty easy to play this game plan of just countering a couple of times against a deck like Underworld Breach, because the Zenith Flares just kill them so quickly.
Yeah, and I still think you can play the Fox out against some people. It's just that's not the primary plan. This is a deck that only has 7 white available on turn 1 anyway.
Oh, well, lame.
You know what I mean?
But this is super hot.
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to transition to the standard? Do you want to talk about the standard version of this deck? Or you're already talking about Keruga? Let me tell you something. The Keruga stats in that PTQ last week were I want to say they're like nothing I've ever seen. Like, they were... I struggle to have ever seen deck performance like this. And I was racking my brain about, Fairies, Jund, Stoneblade,
What about Oko?
I'm sorry, say again?
What about Oko?
Well...
so
I guess
standard version of this deck
as much as me.
Dude, I'm just saying that
Oko was good.
Keruga is definitely, I think that there's no question that the Keruga Fires of Invention sort of deck, the primary way being, of course, Jeskai, but there is some variation. That's definitely the new top dog. I mean, we saw initially, out the gates, there was, I think, the Witch's Oven, Loris stuff was and, Obosh with Witch's Oven, those type of things were I think, arguably fighting for that top slot, but I think there's no question that right now the Fires of Invention stuff built most of the time around Keruga, sometimes Yorion, but most of the time around Keruga. That's the first and foremost defining strategy of the format.
If we look at the performance of the Keruga Jeskai Fires deck in the online PTQ, it was insane in my opinion, right? So 15 of the 32 decks in the top 32 were Jeskai Fires with Keruga. And disproportionately towards the top end, right? Not towards, the 17 through 32. On top of that, 5 of the top 8 were Jeskai Keruga decks. But that's not even the crazy part. The crazy part is if you just look at the wins that are happening in a top 8, there are 7 available wins. If you go from top 8 to top 4, there's 4 wins there. If you go from top 4 to top 2, there's 2 more wins there. And then top 2 to the winner is 1. So 4 plus 2 plus 1 is 7. 6 of the 7 wins were also the Keruga Jeskai Fires deck. It's unbelievable, the level of dominance, at least in that one tournament.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the defining strategy as of right now. I mean, out the gate, I think the various Witches of Index, obviously, were a lot more of a consideration. But I think things are not done evolving. Like, people are only just starting to figure out how to use a lot of the stuff from Ikoria. And obviously, the Keruga deck is basically just the existing deck that was already a Tier 1 strategy with Keruga in it. So it's not exactly that one. It's not hard to see how people have gotten to a good version so far, you know.
I do think there's a little more compromise in it than that. One of the things that you and I liked so much about the Jeskai Fires deck, Circa Worlds, was that kind of Frenchy innovation of adding Robber of the Rich. And
dude, no, you are obsessed with it. I thought it was great for the weekend. Dude, it's a free Keruga. You get a Brain Geyser in this big body without even having to play with it. That's so much better than Robber of the Rich.
I'm just saying it's not totally free. Was a big fan of Robber of the Rich. All right. Here's the big question. Big question. Yeah. If you look at the winner of that tournament, _Goblin Lackey did something that I never saw coming. Went to 0 temples. 0. No temples. 29 lands in _Goblin Lackey's deck. None of them are temples. Played 4 copies of the Ragaran Triome, which is, almost everybody's going to play 4 copies of the Ragaran Triome. Some people only played 3, but I think it's high level expectation to play 4. Played 4 copies of Savai Triome. So 8 Triomes, including 4 theoretically off-color Mardu Triomes. No temples. That is a different approach to the deck, in my opinion.
I mean, your valuing of mana definitely changes when you're, seeing how far you can push Fires of Invention.
So I guess the presumption is if you have Fires of Invention in play, then you're not doing anything with your mana anyway, right? So cycling 3 is a relatively low way to draw a card.
Right, exactly. And the relative value of being able to cycle versus having to actually play your land, But I don't know. It's interesting. I can't speak to whether that's actually the right way to do it, because man, it's an innovation. That's a different sort of assumption around how you build these mana bases.
Yeah, there were a couple of things that I was thinking maybe bad, and then a couple of things that I thought were really strong opportunities. Bad's the wrong word, just negatives when considering as temples. I feel like Fires is 2 different decks. It's one deck when it has Fires of Invention in play, and then it's a completely different performing deck when it doesn't. One of the things that I loved about having the heavy temple versions, which we saw previously, was that in the first 3 to 4 turns of the game, along with Sphinx of Foresight, it was just helping you to find your Fires and to find the mana required to get the Fires in play. Because 4 isn't free, even though you're talking about decks that have upwards of 27 lands. So that combination of effects I thought was very, very contextually useful, and then also low costs in a deck that doesn't have any 1-drops, right? So that was one thing. That was kind of a negative. But I think on the positive end, if you have Fires of Invention down and your opponent has answered your first flurry, right? They've wrathed you and you're out now. The ability to just draw a temple and play it and then make sure there's a threat on top of your deck isn't that exciting versus the ability to just cycle potentially into a threat that you'll play for free anyway. I think that's kind of a really big deal once you assume that Fires is in play. Yeah?
It can be. Yeah, I mean, it's good. It matters there. I don't know, though. That's not the only... There's the question of how much does that particular advantage matter compared to some of the other advantages, though, right? For instance, you're dead if your 4th lane comes into play tapped with this deck, right?
Oh, well. It's not good. It's not good at all.
And so if you end up playing with any amount of castles, you're getting extra untapped land because of having tri-lands instead of temples.
Oh, that's nice. So Roger and Triome is an island for Castle Vantris.
Right.
Savai Triome is not an island, though, despite having 3 basic land types. There is one other thing, though, that is pretty cool about playing Savai Triome, which is that taps for black, so that you can get action on Kenrith the Returned King's reanimation ability.
Oh, that's really good.
That's good, right? So, like, let's say
that's pretty good.
They wrath you, you respond with a Kenrith, and then instead of just giving it haste, you're like, I wasn't using this 5 mana anyway. B4, go get back my Cavalier. Now I'm going to, use this R and kill you, for 10. That, I think, is the super cool part of Savai Triome on top of everything else. But I think jury's out. I would be very surprised if we continued to see, 0 temples. I think temples are really good in this strategy. But, underscore Goblin Lackey really pushed it on the Triomes and was highly rewarded for it this past week.
Dude, maybe this is crazy, but I'm not actually sure that you can't build these decks with 32 or 33 land. I mean, I know most of the time you can only play 1 land a turn, right? But these decks are, not only do they work really well, first of all, you have to hit all your drops. That's already true. But
even after you have fires, you have to hit your drops, right? You're playing 5 and 6 casting cost threats.
But Cavalier of Flames, really, it does matter. It does matter how many lands you play. And when you've got so many lands with so much, so low of opportunity cost, and if you have extra lands so that you can play the right lands early on, and then you're just going to get rid of them all later anyway, I don't know, man. I kind of could picture it, probably bad, but I could kind of picture it being really surprising, where it's oh my God, did he really just play 33 land in his deck? Just no, not for the combo or what, just 33 land, because look, when you've got this many cycling lands and tri-lands and castles and
the Yorion
plus,
decks are playing
a package of grazers,
34 lands.
No, dude, I'm not. No, dude, right. We got to. Oh yeah, I guess you'd have to Yorion if you're playing the grazer. Did you see the blue-green mutate deck though? Dude, so over at the standard prelim on the 29th or the 28th, something like that, Wardy 333 played a blue-green mutate deck with actually doing it, going all in with so Polywog Symbiote is kind of just a key part of the engine here. And what's interesting is the decision not to play the Essence Symbiote. Instead, having just Paradise Druid and the possibility of using Parcel Beast in order to upgrade your Arboreal Grazer.
Wow. It's going to take me a while to just absorb this. This deck has 33 creatures in order to support sideboard Buddy Umari the Collector. 27 lands, which is a ton when you're considering that it's got these 2 mana cards like Polywog Symbiote and Paradise Druid, which are essentially mana, right?
Oh, well, and the way that Migratory Greathorn plays out, it's mostly a 3-cost Rampant Growth. And if
the first
creature
of many
lives,
3-cost Rampant Growths, I guess.
If it gets to live, well, the rest are all 0 cost. But and it's not like you're not ramping out more with Auspicious Starix, right? This is a deck that has 4 Auspicious Starix and 4 Aluna Apex of Wishes, and that's despite the fact that it can't even cast Aluna Apex of Wishes straight up without the Paradise Druid.
I mean, that's kind of a shame, given this is a 27 land deck. Can't we fit a mountain in there? I mean, the deck literally has the card,
dude.
Migratory Greathorn. I mean,
it's so much better. You don't want to be tricked into accidentally casting it. You really want to mutate that bad boy. But dude, how sweet is Castle Garenbrig with stuff like Auspicious Starix?
I got to tell you, I've played with and against Auspicious Starix a bunch in Limited, and it never occurred to me that this would be in a 60 card deck. Although I guess there's no
Really?
reason why it wouldn't.
Dude, all you want to do is just get more. All this deck is creatures and land, right?
I mean,
The land is getting you up to 8, and the creatures are giving you more bodies, so that when you get up to 8, you can raise Forerunners them into next Tuesday.
how does this not have the one that's a 3 casting cost blue green 1 guy for 3/3 or 5 to mutate that makes 3?
Because it's just not that good. Because I just don't think that card's rate's very good. It's very fragile. It's high risk for a relatively low ceiling. Maybe it's right to play, but I'm not particularly keen on it.
Are you not into 4 Arboreal Grazer?
I think I would play forever.
I mean, in this deck, right? If you're like Grazer into Migratory Greathorn, it's like a combo, right?
It's in a lot of things. If you just go turn 1 Grazer, turn 2 Parcel Beast, use it. Wow, are you doing it?
Yeah.
So I would play 4 Grazer. I think the Grazer looks incredible in this deck.
I think this deck has got my juices flowing. Notable Paradise Druid, not a human. It's an elf druid. So,
oh yeah.
It's all on brand. 27 land seems like a ton to me.
Oh, I don't hate that. I don't hate that at all. Dude, you got to view this as a ramp deck. This is a blue-green ramp deck.
I got to tell you, I have been at least medium impressed playing against Gemrazor in Standard. Gemrazor the other night beat up my Lucky Clover twice. I didn't like it.
Gemrazor's good.
Very... So, yeah, again, like, just... I'm not saying that I did like, oh, this card looks bad. No, it looks fine, but I was very surprised at how effective it was. Really, really nicely surprised.
Sure.
Yes, so it's weird. This deck is sideboarding all kinds of cards that are just like the regular exciting cards that people play in their decks, right? Like Brazen Borrower and Voracious Hydra and Agent of Treachery.
But that's because that's with a good reason, though. This is like not an uncommon plan, right? Like if your main deck is all in on a linear, it's not uncommon to stick good cards that are kind of like adjacent in your sideboard. Because, like, for instance, Brazen Borrowers is like very effective interaction for spots where you need interaction. But this deck doesn't always want to be using interaction. It wants to be extremely in on its linear. That said, once you sideboard, the more you go towards interaction, the more you want just good cards that do the interaction and not just be all in on your theme. So this is actually a quasi-transformational sideboard that lets you switch to being a slightly more traditional ramp deck and a little bit less of a combo deck.
Mild counterpoint. Very mild counterpoint. The main deck has got this linear going on, right, where almost all the cards have got some sort of mutate, and then you're just going to mutate on top of mutations and kind of go crazy until you hit End-Raise Forerunners, right? But adding cards like Voracious Hydra, Agent of Treachery, and Brazen Borrower from the sideboard are not kind of pulling you out of very many... I think Brazen Borrower maybe, and there's only 3 of them, though. Not really pulling you out of situations where the opponent is very good against creatures.
So what?
I mean, like, usually when people do that kind of stuff that you were referencing, I feel like they're doing something where, like, creatures, or at least certain types of creatures, are kind of edging out the counter strategy that the opponent might have.
Oh, no, see... Okay, so let's say you're playing this deck as is, right? Against somebody who's playing some sort of a blue-white X control deck, right? If you, like, game 1... your deck with 33 creatures, you're kind of vulnerable to that stuff, right? But it's kind of nice to be able to switch to a game plan where Brazen Borrower can give you a flash threat after they swept the board that you can then immediately mutate and start going again, right?
That's sweet.
And then Agent of Treachery, obviously you don't want Agent of Treachery main deck. You just want End-Raise Forerunner. If you had really more room for another expensive card in this deck, you would play more End-Raise Forerunner. But after sideboarding, End-Raze Forerunners value changes because you can expect other people to be sideboarding in such a way that you're not necessarily going to be able to just count on being wide, and have that much mana and everything. Agent of Treachery lets you play a little bit smaller ball of a game. It's still pretty freaking big. But, like, you can actually hit them from a different angle when you actually have to fight somebody who has more removal. Because a lot of these decks don't have that much removal in their main deck, but they have a ton of removal on the sideboard. So you take advantage of the fact that most people don't have that much removal main deck. And then after they have a ton of removal on the sideboard, you play a bunch of cards that are good against removal, like Brazen Borrower, Agent of Treachery, even Voracious Hydra. Because Voracious Hydra is frequently going to be able to get you value on the way in.
What do you think about playing some Great Sharks in the main deck or sideboard? Like, they're not that off-brand, and I mean, like, if you're just anticipating other people playing cards like Umori or Luris or whatever, you just have an opportunity to get a 2-for-1.
I don't know. Yeah, I know, but that's not what this deck is doing. It's not trying to get a 2-for-1. It's trying to combo them out. There's a lot of places you can just build your Elf Ball combo deck to get a 2-for-1, but most of the time that's not actually what you're in the market for. It's like if this deck was really going to use the Great Shark main deck, it would use Brazen Borrower main deck. It's trying to be all in on its linear. Every single card that it has beyond the first two turns, they're all part of the combo. It's all mutate until you get to End-Raze Forerunner, which is the end game. I think, if anything, you could argue a case for the Pouncing Shore Shark, just because it's actually on plan.
All right.
But I wouldn't, just because I think you want to be even more just all in on more powerful.
What about the Flash Octopus? That at least has mutate.
Yeah, and it could be okay. It's just, what would you cut? Because I think that the Flash Octopus, first of all, it works great in non-mutate decks.
Yeah.
And it's not particularly good for a mutate deck. But second of all, I think that it works better when you're in a deck that's really valuing all your mutate effects being super cheap. Like, this deck has just, in theory, 3 or 4 Grazers. If you had more 1-drops, I think the Octopus gets a lot more attractive.
Oh, yeah. Way. This is a really exciting deck. I guess probably the first of many mutate linear decks we're likely to see given this set of cards. I mean, they're not even legal in paper Magic yet, so this is super preliminary for the standard preliminary, but thanks for sharing this one. It's awesome. It was not the only, or I think even most successful hyperlinear Ikoria-driven creature deck to come out of the last week or so. I mean, I think like we would be very remiss to not mention Takumi Utsunomiya's Jeskai cycling deck from the top 8 of Magic Fest Online Weekly Championship 2. What do you think about this deck? I would just have to say spoilers. Most exciting standard deck I've seen in years.
Please, really?
Yeah, it's like,
I don't know.
This is a
startling development for you. This is a startling development.
What, you mean all these cards that just have the word cycling or whenever you cycle printed on them that are hyper efficient offensively, and then a ton of cards that cycle for 1?
So I think this deck's pretty cool. Obviously this is a deck that's, instead of just all I'm gonna do is play cycle in kind of a mediocre control game and combo you out with 2 Zenith Flares. This one's playing like a Boros Landfall deck in a way of sorts, right? Like your Fox is really good in this deck. This deck makes it. Here it's like the best Queen Dryad ever, to use Michael Flores' expression. And Drannith Stinger and Drannith Healer are no slouches. And the Valiant Rescuer is a little, you have to, you actually, that kind of presumes that the game's going on a little bit, but it's still good. It's still part of the whole package.
So,
oh yeah, please.
I think every one of these creatures has got like a cool and powerful function. First of all, I played against the Valiant Rescuer with Teamer earlier this week, and I just didn't draw the things to kill a 3/1. So we just got in a standoff where I had 5/5s and he couldn't attack me, right? But he had 2 Valiant Rescuers. When he finally attacked me, there were something like 14 tokens in play. I was killed, right? I was just like, This is pretty good if you draw 2 copies and are unanswered. The Flourishing Fox, you already said, I think is just unbelievable. It's on theme, everything in this one. But the one that I think is secretly the superstar card, like really super secretly the best card, is Drannith Healer. And the reason I think that is it's 2/2, and if you draw 2 copies and you're playing against like the Obosh version of Rakdos, they're kind of just dead. Their guys can't kill it, because it seriously, 2 toughness is rough for them to get through before Obosh hits play. And by the time Obosh hits play, you're just going to kill Obosh with a well-placed Zenith Flare anyway. You're just going to sit there. They're not going to attack you, and you're just going to gain like 4 life a turn until they just concede. It's weird to me that like this Grizzly Bears with a cycling clause on it would be so potentially dominant, but it messes up a key matchup in Standard.
I believe it, but I got to imagine the Improbable Alliance is the heavier lifter in this deck than Drannith Healer.
Improbable Alliance. You mean the only reason the deck actually needs to play blue, right? Like every other card in this deck, I'm like, why would you even play this, right? Like, even if you wanted to play a card like Boon of the Wishgiver, which cycles for 1, you're like, all right, I guess play this. You don't have to play any blue mana, right? But okay, Improbable Alliance.
Well, you're going to play Rogrin Triome anyway, so it's not like you don't have a back door.
Yeah, you're going to play the card, but like you don't need to have, a bunch of like steam vents and stuff like that for actual blueness. But yes, Improbable Alliance. I mean, if you have 1, it's probably problems for the opponent. If you have more than 1, they are doomed. Like you're just doomed if there's 2 Improbable Alliances in play.
You gotta think about this for a second. When you put out Improbable Alliance, isn't this kind of like a Bitter Blossom? But instead of you get a 1/1 flyer and you take a damage, it's you get a 1/1 flyer, but then you also get another 1/1 flyer instead of taking a damage.
Yeah.
Every turn you just get 2 1/1 flyers.
So this deck is almost entirely Cycle 1 cards, right? So the only ones that don't have Cycle 1 is 4 copies of Valiant Rescuer, which has Cycle 2, right? So, among the spells, right? And Zenith Flare, which obviously is like the absolute amazing endgame in this deck. So everything else in the deck, like Footfall Crater is there because it cycles for 1. If you play Improbable Alliance on turn 2 and then hit your land drop, right? You just cycle at 1 immediately. You've already drawn a card, right? Now you have a fairy, go. Now, on their turn, you cycle twice, which means that you drew 2 cards, you have another fairy. Which is just another way of saying what you just said, except for you also drew 2 cards. It's not just you didn't take a damage and instead you got another 1/1. You also drew 2 cards. Oh, I'm sorry, 3 cards. You drew 3 cards. That is, I don't know, man. And that's with 1 Improbable Alliance in play.
Yeah, I mean, you did pitch a bunch of cards to draw those cards. But if you're getting any more healer triggers or stinger triggers or fox triggers or rescuer triggers, I don't know. This deck looks sweet. Plus, as if it wasn't enough, this is a Lurrus of the Dream Den deck.
Oh, I forgot. Of course, there's also a companion that not only if they kill your guy, you can just get it back, but like you can cycle your guy and then just play it out. That's so cool.
Yeah, looks excellent.
This is the thing I'd say about this deck. Awesome first draft. Absolutely awesome first draft. I think that there are so many things you can do to make this deck better already out of the sideboard that are just mind-blowing in terms of how it would mess up certain
Like what?
decks. Like, what if you played Narset Parter of Veils in the sideboard? What would that do to the mirror match? There's not a lot of good ways for a deck to attack a Narset in the mirror match, right? Because you can go wide and block, same as them, right? So either they're going to spend their very valuable Zenith Flare on it, or they don't have a lot of ways, and even their Zenith Flare will be very hampered if you have a Narset. Separately, one of the worst matchups for this deck is Jeskai Fires, right? So I would say, like, of all the decks in Standard, this deck has a really, really good game against most of them, but Jeskai Fires dominates it. Narset would be pretty good resistance.
That's a tough spot in the metagame to be right now.
Yes, I agree. When Jeskai Fires is literally unprecedented level of dominance, not counting Oko. Because Oko, you were correct, makes Keruga look like not very dominant at all.
Did you see the winner's deck? Kind of an interesting little twist. So on the one hand, it looks like a Rakdos Cauldron Familiar Witch's Oven sort of deck with an Obosh kind of theme to it, right? But what's interesting, the twist here, is that they're getting more money out of the Whisper Squad by using 4 copies of Heraldic Banner. Banner, yeah, name Black, of course, which Heraldic Banner is doubly sweet here because not only do you get to play the banner as an anthem for all your Woe Strider, Whisper Squad, Serrated Scorpion, Gutterbones, Cauldron Familiar. I mean, just another anthem is great anyway, right? But it's also an accelerator that takes you from 3 to 5, and you're a deck that gets a 5-drop that's really powerful for free. So you can actually play 22 land and consistently play a 5 on turn 4.
Yep.
If you want. And you're frequently not going to want to because sometimes it's like nice to have that extra turn to set up. But the Heraldic Banner is great anyway because when you play it, you can still play a 1 in that same turn.
I agree with everything you just said, obviously. I think this was an outstanding way to build the strategy. Rakdos Sacrifice. I saw some chatter about Heraldic Banner prior to the event. I just kind of filed it away. I'm like, oh, that's kind of a novel thing to do. But to see it actually come out and win, I think the ability to accelerate into that faster Obosh is extremely attractive. And the fact that it just turns these Cauldron Familiars, which are just so, shall we say, not durable, right? into, like, you actually kind of have to respect them a lot. Once there's a Heraldic Banner in play, very, very attractive.
Yeah, so I agree with you, man. Definitely impressed. Great showing, great deck.
Who do you like this week?
For standard?
Yeah.
Because it's hard. Because when I talk about who I like this week, I'm still so hung up on that Doom Foretold Demonic Pact deck. That's my deck of the week.
Oh, I mean, the Demonic Pact deck is. I 100% agree with you. I said, at the beginning, that's our favorite deck, whether or not it's the favorite. But I mean, mostly I think people are going to be thinking about standard right now, and there's a lot of standard events that are going on, despite the fact that we're socially distancing. I'm just wondering which one you think is going to be the one to take people to the promised land.
Well, if everything else was just equal, I would. If I'm just betting, I would bet on the Fires of Invention stuff and not be happy about it. But I would prefer to live in the world where we beat that one. And to me, I think the next step to beating it is understanding more what you can do with some of this ramp stuff that you're doing.
Oh,
like I think that right now, clearly, the big pillars are the Cauldron Familiar deck and the Fires of Invention deck, and both of them can be, it could be either a Lurrus or an Obosh, can be either a Keruga or a Yorion. And then there's a variety of different Uro decks that are showing up in different ways, but I don't think people have perfected that yet. I also think that people might not know how to build aggro yet. I don't know that I do, outside of just the straightforward Rakdos stuff, or a decent mono red deck.
So I don't know about what a decent mono red deck is. Don't know what that is yet. I got to say, for me, deck of my heart is the Jeskai cycling deck. But
that's cool.
I agree with you where you ended up. Good friend of mine was playing in those 3-round qualifiers, the Channel Fireball kind of 3. If you go 3-0, you qualify for the Saturday tournament. Just went 2-1 a bunch of times, and I'm like, what's going on? He's like, this deck's so good. And I'm like, well, you keep going 2-1. That's a good win rate. He's like, keep losing to Jeskai Fires. And I said, buddy, my friend, what did you just say? And he's just like, keep losing to Jeskai Fires. And I said, was there any ambiguity about what the highest win rate deck was? I mean, you saw the PTQ results. He's like, yeah. I told him to sleeve up Jeskai Fires for the evening tournament. I actually don't know how that went. It seemed to me that if he kept going 2-1 with losses to Jeskai Fires, there was a clear direction to go.
I actually, if we could talk about one more deck, I do think it's a couple days ago, but let's see, a standard challenge from like the 27th had Ruime playing a Luca Coppercoat Outcast, Winota Joiner of Forces deck, obviously trying to cheat out Agent of Treachery. You just drop the Winota and then immediately attack your opponent with like a Fibblethip the Lost and a Bone Crusher Giant or a Brazen Borrower, whatever. And then you immediately, or just to raise the alarm tokens.
Yep.
And then you're just cycling through your deck really quickly. And Charming Prince in particular is so dope because you get to blink the Agent of Treachery. And if you find another Winota, you can play it and be already attacking with it. I think this deck's really cool. And I think this is a pretty good version of it. I, in particular, like the use of 26 land. It's very different.
I agree with a lot of what you said. One thing I don't like about this deck at all.
Is it the Luca?
No. Luca's great. The thing that I dislike is when you look at the sideboard, it has a 4, a 2, a 4, a 2, and a 3. Doesn't have a 1.
Ooh. Where's the companion?
1. So I don't know which one you should play. Luca's got 2 reds and Agent of Treachery's got 2 blues. That's out. You got too many things that cost 2 versus 5. That's out. You can't get around, I think, playing Teferi Time Reveler and Luca in this deck and raise the alarm. So that's out. So I think the correct version of this deck at some point is going to have to hone some of those main deck cards and figure out who they want to have on their team in the side.
Man, it is tough. You're right. That does make it tough. Interesting.
But I think in principle, this is a good direction to go if we're going to think about attack-based strategies, because some of these internally kind of contained sub-combos with Charming Prince and Fibblethip and Agent of Treachery seem really powerful to me. But, I
could kind of imagine Elite Guard Mage.
Ooh.
That's pretty good.
Guard Mage is good here. I think so.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's not bad. It's a human.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. So actually, the deck that I hope people figure out how to do for next week that I think is going to be a game changer is Dimir Flash.
Okay.
That's, I think, when somebody finds the right way to build Dimir Flash, that's going to change the entire landscape.
All right, that sounds like a great challenge. And you're betting on Umori for that deck?
No, not necessarily. I think Umori is like one way to do it, but I actually my first, it's interesting playing Umori. You could, but there is also a lot of value to a lot of the spells. I really do like the permission and so on. I also think that you got to remember that, you're dealing with a format where there's a lot of people playing sweepers. There's a lot of people playing combos. I don't know.
You just got to respect other people's game plan, you're saying, a little bit more than a mono creature deck.
No, it depends on what you get for it, because I think a free 4/5 that accelerates you is a really powerful advantage. I just would want to consider all the different options, see what other possibilities there are for this, for whatever we do there.
All right.
I'm not above just playing Yorion in my Flash deck, dude.
Well, I'm trying to think. A lot of the creatures you would play in your Flash deck get worse if you Yorion. So that I guess it's not compulsory to do that, but I would want ones that were happy to be Yorion.
True. All right, dude. Awesome stuff.
All right.
See you next week.
Bye-bye.
Life didn't work so great. Tried to play dredge, so jailer hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Your core trapped in amber stasis state. Lost a lot of friends, got left behind. Had to find a way not to lose my mind. Trapped in a vault with